Tonight is it Tuesday, November 5th, and we're having the technology meeting for Daniel Boone Area District High School. And we have Joya Olson, Rob Hurley, Scott Matz, Preston McKnight, and Dr. Cooper, and Kevin Strobel. Scott.
Under item number 1, our project updates, the last item on there, telecommunication update. We're off and running on that one now. We're in the quote-unquote design phase with them, so pricing did come back indicating the bulk part of our phone bill can be substantially reduced by going away from a PRI to SIP functionality.
SID, you say?
SIP, SIP.
SIP.
Yep. And what we've learned is we can also transition some of the analog lines that we thought we'd still have to retain. So those are primarily for fire alarms, elevators, some of the HVAC equipment with, or even freezers that dial out over a line that we're mandated to maintain a direct line to. We can actually migrate those over as well. So we're working on having.
Are they doing voice over IP now, finally?
Yeah, yep. It'll be basically it has a converter on it to convert it back to that analog functionality, but it still goes out the same. Still, the key part to a lot of those is the caller ID that it presents. So when the elevator at Monocacy is calling out, it registers as that address.
So they go into this design phase, and then eventually you get into a pricing phase. And
yeah. So we have the pricing for the bulk of our phone calling. What we'll have to add in yet now is these one-off analog lines. Those weren't originally in our request simply because we thought those would have to maintain as an analog functionality, not realizing there is a digital converter for that. So that would allow us really to basically free ourselves from Windstream for everything.
Okay.
Which is music to our ears in the long run. So
there won't be like one analog line into each building anymore?
So we would have one for 911 purposes.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, we maintain that, but that would even still be through, more likely Service Electric would be the provider. Similar, if you have them at home for your phone service, it would be that same concept they can
and
provide.
Power cuts wouldn't affect it?
No, it would still it would be on our emergency backup power. So
I see.
Yeah, through that.
Okay.
That
Is anything cut over to them now? Or just we're getting at?
For emergency power?
No, in terms of Service Electric changing the phone system.
Yeah. No, nothing is cut over.
Nothing cut over yet, yeah.
No. They provide our building-to-building network connections,
Okay.
the fiber, so
Right.
they're in district already, and that's why
Right.
really we're able to take advantage of their in-house infrastructure already, and that's why
I got
they're
you.
the most competitive out of everyone, but nothing has been cut over yet to that platform.
What's your thought process then in terms of making a decision on which provider?
So the other piece that we learned that I never knew, the FCC will not allow you to do number cutovers around holidays. That's by law. So we're going to have to figure out where we'll have breaks that we could actually do that. That was an interesting bit of information that didn't know that they won't do those migrations during that time. So we'll have to.
They might be shorthanded.
What's that?
Maybe they're shorthanded. I don't know.
You mean like any holidays?
Yeah, any federal holiday.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They're not even really involved in the process, but I guess there must be something on the back end that they're checking them off.
Okay.
So that'll be our next dance that we'll do to figure out where we can do it with as little interruption as possible. The overall process isn't difficult. It's more so planning for the what ifs if for some reason something doesn't go well. Obviously, phone service being a slightly critical aspect of our operation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once we determine those, some lines like fax lines and different things, less intrusive that we can cut over in more of a production state, but that those bulk numbers, that's where we'll plan that in a much more deliberate and delicate manner, so we're not exposing ourselves.
So I'm trying to go back in my memory because I know you work with it every day. So the first phase was to get out of this building and move over. Okay, so that's done.
Yep, we're good. Yeah, that's
Yep.
great.
So now you're looking at an entire new system, right? So there'll be less money.
Yep.
And then in the process of doing that, it went. Wait, there's no lights.
It's kind of like my office.
Everybody's got their lighter out.
It's an inside joke.
And so that piece is done. You've already got all that pricing in. At one point, then all of a sudden, wow, there's this whole new process that where you can maybe take all the analog lines
Yes.
and bring them into the. I got you.
Yep.
I just want to make sure I got my head wrapped around
You're
it.
perfect. You're perfect.
Because they're going to ask me to report on it, and I just.
Exactly. Yeah,
Thanks.
basically, what it comes down to is everything can be moved.
That's
over.
fantastic. That's great. Do you know what kind of savings we were looking at?
Currently, it looks like about 50% savings, really.
On just the
year over year.
analogs or the overall total system?
And just the analogs, once that comes in, I'm sure that'll chip away a little bit at, but those are not a significant part of the system.
Yeah,
There's
I didn't think
less than
so.
3 dozen of them. So,
Okay.
that bulk line, really the 2 PRIs, that's where those large, significant savings come in, and
Okay.
that we're confident on that number.
Do we know what that approximate savings are?
It looks like we go from about 3,300 down to around 1,500.
Okay, about 50%. Great.
Any other questions on that one?
No.
All right. So on the 2021 budget prep, I want to go over the hardware replacement schedule, and I will apologize. I wanted to deliver this in presentation form, and in a rare instance, rare, my Apple equipment is not functioning properly. So I want to stress that is a rare occurrence. So I will read it off, and I can then share it out.
We're good.
We're good.
Well, you know, the nice thing, when you share it out, no viruses will go with it.
That's true.
Exactly, that's true. Yeah, they can't.
Exactly. So on the client device end, it's our typical replacement of desktop, laptop, and iPads. On the desktop computer front, we're looking at about 215 devices that will need to be replaced. The nice thing highlight there is these are 4-year-old devices, so we're finally actually hitting our target replacement schedule for those devices. That's the first time really since I've been in the district that we're finally hitting that, so that's great. And on the laptop computer side, it's about 145 devices there, and those are about 4 to 5 years old, so we're basically right there as well with the replacement schedule being on target, and then as we're bringing on these other lease schedules, we'll continue in that pattern. So that's been a great relief to us finally to have a predictable, reliable replacement cycle. And on the iPad side, it's about 300 devices. Those largely represent faculty devices at the elementary centers and the middle school as well for their one-to-one. This does not include, obviously, the middle school one-to-one devices for the students, as well as classroom iPads at Amity Intermediate. And included in this year's cycle, this would not be lease item. These are things we purchase on an as-needed basis, is projectors. So what we're running into is as we're buying new laptops, they're phasing out the old VGA connection. Those are the ones that look something like a Keystone. And they're going to HDMI, and not all of our projectors have enough HDMI connections to facilitate that. We've tried using converters. We end up getting a buzzing in the system. It's just not as clear quality as really we'd like. So we have those built in. And those are replacing 7-year-old devices, so they are nearing their end of life anyway.
How many of
for
those?
us.
How many?
So that works out to about 100 projectors, and that's exclusively in the 2 elementary buildings. The middle school and high school had their projectors replaced more recently, so they're not an issue for us on that front. So, looking at that, estimated total hardware budget for client devices is around $200,000. That includes, again, the projectors as well as lease equipment. That represents about $150,000 reduction compared to last year, just based on just where our needs are for a replacement cycle, as well as equipment that's going to be phased out at the middle school as a result of the one-to-one over there.
Last year, we had talked about coming up with some type of a budget that's kind of consistent.
Yes.
Is it falling, or is that where we're heading now? We're starting to fall into that line where we can pretty much know every year you're going to have X amount of dollars that are falling into that, unless there's some catastrophe that happens.
Correct.
You
Yeah,
can
we-
forecast that.
we
Is
tried
that
to average
is that
out.
200,000 fit last year? I don't have it with me, but is that approximately where we were in our
Yeah.
terms of our budget?
Yep. What we ended up doing is a couple, in that desktop computer number, that 215, we identified a model of computer that normally would have been replaced next year, but we've seen a number of hardware failures with it, so we included that in the replacement cycle to level that off, so we didn't see that drop this year and then a bump up
Spike
next year.
next
So
year,
that
so you
evened
pulled them
everything
back.
out. And it allowed us to just really address some operating issues in general for us for next year then as well. Looking specifically at the middle school one-to-one devices, we're looking at a total of 900 devices. That builds in our spare pool for any failures over the life of it. Since we don't purchase the extended warranty on devices, it makes more sense just to have a spare pool available to us. Looking at a 4-year lease schedule, like we did at the high school, that works out to about $90,000 a year. That's with cases and basically all in with them. I do believe that number will lower itself a little bit. We just allowed about a 10% buffer in there for any price fluctuations. Last year we got a little close to our buffer just with tariffs and everything else like that, but as long as things maintain, that number will actually creep down a little bit as well based on the total number. But that's keeping us in line with the buffer that we built in as far as the number of devices at the high school, and that's been working out well for us. That's not changing the case. The case has held up well for us at the high school, so barring any changes on Apple's end as far as the device, it would be the same device our high school kids have as well. On the infrastructure side, it's a little bit nicer for us this summer. It's more in our data center, not so much out in the buildings. So we have a total of 4 server replacements. 3 of those are domain controllers, and what domain controllers are the devices that allow you to sign in. They authenticate your username and password. They do DNS, which is what allows you to type www.dboon.org or helpdesk.dboon.org, that sort of thing. Those are physical boxes that we have, mostly for redundancy perspective. If another environment goes down, they're standalone, so people can always sign in. So we have 3 of those, and we have a SQL database server, so that houses all of our key databases for our point of sale system for lunch, the card access system, the transportation system, all those in-house databases that are still on on-premise servers. So that is due for replacement.
Is that something eventually you get away from and just do everything in the cloud? Is that?
Slowly but surely,
I mean, I would
load on that
imagine if
server-
it's down, you can't sign in. That's a bad day.
Yeah,
So
so-
there's going to be some things that you're going to have to keep, but.
We've looked at, as far as on the domain controllers, looking at like Azure AD would be the Microsoft's equivalent of it. From a cost perspective, it doesn't cost out yet for us because
Okay.
while they're servers, they're relatively inexpensive servers. They're about $1,400, so they're not beefy
Right.
ones.
I gotcha.
And on the database side, the load on that server has been decreasing steadily. Since this has last been replaced, we offloaded Destiny, which was our library card catalog software, a couple curricular apps, so it's seen a reduction in load, and probably in another 5 years, it would be interesting to see if we need to replace that in its current state or not, because load on that is going a lot more cloud-based.
Right.
Our website, actually, that'd be another one that's now off of it, that's cloud-hosted, so we are seeing our overall physical infrastructure slowly reduce itself in favor of cloud, and and all the benefits really that come from that for the Microsoft and Google will let them handle the redundancy side of it, and with
I
the
agree
pretty
with
solid operation.
Just updating libraries is a
What's
nightmare. Updating libraries is a nightmare just for all the different software.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's the other benefit as we get cloud hosted, because we have to watch as we migrate these servers to make sure all the databases are compatible with the same version. We've been fortunate, but it's always, we always wonder when that's going to become an issue for us.
Gotcha.
On the system sustainability front, looking at that second internet connection at the middle school so that we're not relying on that one connection as we go more cloud-based. So that would be a lesser capacity connection, but one should our main connection from the IU fail, that we'd be able to fall back and still have some functionality given how much of our operational and instructional needs are going out over the internet. And that would require an additional firewall over at the middle school just to have 2 different locations for it.
Don't we already have that redundancy in now?
We do not.
Okay.
We have redundancy with a lot of our servers. We don't have anything from an internet capacity. It's been single on the IU. Overall, the IU has been a great partner, that we don't see too many connections there. In the last year, a number of other districts fell victim to some unfortunate weather issues that impacted their fiber. We just got lucky, so this would be a separate vendor, a separate path. So hopefully, something gets taken out on 724, another line coming in off of 562 or some other direction would then.
And it just
allow
handle
us
the
to
critical
run.
things.
What's that?
It'll just handle the critical things.
It would.
Do we ever get into a spike situation to where we're maxed out, where it could kind of offload some over there during that time frame?
At this point, we're not.
Okay.
At next year with the 1-to-1 going on, I would believe that will provide us that buffer with the middle school's capacity coming online. We're not increasing anything through the IU with the anticipation of that other redundant connections that we could do load balancing, that would address
okay.
anything. We have included on the E-rate side a wiring project at the high school to eliminate ceiling-based network connections that are in, basically, when that building, the new end of the building was constructed, they put network connections up in the ceiling. The network switches are up there. It's not a good use of our funds because we end up having a full switch up there to power limited connections, whereas if they fell back to one of our main distribution points, we could eliminate a substantial number of switches from these ceiling locations. E-rate, we have remaining E-rate funds for the high school, so that will reimburse us for 50% of that project that we can.
And those are for wired connections?
Yeah, they're for wired connections.
Oh.
Yeah. And as I am vertically challenged, those are also fun to work on for us because it requires a ladder up in the ceiling with the connections. So we can run just patches back. There's other locations that we have, our main network distribution points that we can fall back and eliminate probably about 10 switches down to 2 for us, which represents about a $10,000 to $15,000 savings if we don't replace those units.
How many classrooms is that?
It's about 1 to 2 switches per classroom. It works out to 8
For
classrooms.
for that whole side.
Yeah.
So they're just being removed.
Your ideas.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, we have.
So
I wish I was around when the project was built because I'd like to. It's not. You see these things occur if you get a certain distance away. These are all within close proximity, so I'd love to know the logic because it's done with consistency in all these locations, but it doesn't make sense for us really.
So it's just the expense is labor, basically.
Yeah,
You're just
yeah.
pulling them out.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pulling them out and just pulling the patches from the old stuff down to the new. Because we're not going to rewire all the labs. We can just run patches from the old down to a main location.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense to rewire, the whole labs or anything else like that. So it's just a way for us to address that need. And again, no other immediate needs in the high school for those E-rate funds. And next year would be our final year to use those. We anticipate the FCC is going to renew that program, but we don't know in what capacity. So that's what allows us to tap into 50% reimbursement to get that done.
For the E-rate?
Yeah, exactly.
And as it stands, unless there's intervention, that expires at the end of the school year next year or the calendar year?
Correct. After next school year.
Okay.
Yep. Look at the infrastructure costs similar to the client equipment. It works out to about $210,000 total for those items. So
For which items?
the firewall, the servers, the wiring project.
Okay.
And that represents, last year, that line item was about $350,000. So that also represents a reduction since we don't have basically the network switch replacement. That was the bulk of our replacements for last year.
Yeah.
On the system and application side, we have no major changes on that front. So last year we were looking at the website and those items. This year, no major projects. We'll have Infinite Campus coming online. That's project enough for us to roll out, so we haven't planned any major application changes or anything of that nature.
Have you heard of any of the schools, again, I like the fact that we picked it last year, any of the schools getting away from or staying with the old program, but they're just doing it through Sun Guard instead of going through the BCIU?
Yep, Brandywine Heights is looking to do that.
Yeah, I heard Reading's doing the same thing.
So Reading does have eSchool Plus. They were never hosted with the IU. They're a self-contained
Okay.
shop, so they weren't impacted by the IU change. But yeah, they're remaining an eSchool customer as well.
Okay.
Our district, Muhlenberg and Ole are moving forward, and Wyomissing is still up in the air.
Yeah,
as far as
and it wasn't questioning your decision, by the way. It
Oh,
was
yeah,
just more of a
yeah.
question that, why would they do that? Because I understood that it was failing, that it was going to go away. It's not going away. It's just they're not going to support it anymore. Is that correct?
They will continue to support it. It was the cost to support it that we
Right,
would have
because you're
incurred.
part of a group. That's why everybody else split off.
So pulling out,
Okay.
so we increase the cost
Yeah.
of that support.
Right.
Because now it's not a shared expense anymore.
Right, gotcha.
And
Okay.
I've had experiences in the past where we were originally through eSchool through SunGuard itself, and then came on board with the IU just because the service point was better through the IU than it is directly through the SunGuard piece.
Right.
So we find we get better support from that.
Yeah,
That's
the
all about
million-dollar question is at what point does eSchool get sold off? It's owned by a venture capitalist firm, so you know
Right.
they're making a play
Yes.
for their out. So at what point does that occur? That was our other big worry really with their system, that they have other motivations than just the service delivery. Actually, I'll use, if you have no other questions on the budget front, I'll use that as a segue as we go into the Infinite Campus.
I'm good.
Okay. So that implementation is preparing to kick off. The IU has us on schedule for December to formally kick off things. They've been shipping out miscellaneous documentation for us in the intervening time to gather project points of knowledge, who will be the most knowledgeable in different areas. They're preparing to send out general forms for us to gather, like report card layouts and that kind of thing, what I'll call more clerical information. I requested that in advance so we can.
The
get
build
that
starts
going.
in December, is that you're building it in December, hoping for next year launch?
Yep, they would start it in
Okay.
December, and then it would be the 2021 school year, so in August with it is when we'd formally be the first time that would be fully 100% on it. The high school is anticipating their scheduling to occur in it, and we'll be migrating over contact information, health information over the next couple of months really through that process, and that's, the key part of that is garbage in, garbage out, so validating all of our data, making sure it matches up. In our office, we've been going through making sure parents are properly linked to students, so entire households migrate over and not Johnny in the exact same household as Susie, but they created 2 different homes just because they weren't linked. We benefit from other districts ahead of us that we can learn from a lot of their lessons learned. We might be 1 year behind them, but hopefully the expectation is we can do it a little bit smoother now that they found the stumbling blocks for us and that sort of thing.
So if the migration is successful by next school year, does that mean that other than the Limerick cards that were required by law to fill out, does that mean less paperwork for the parents the first day of school?
That would be a goal. Definitely the emergency contact cards, they have a self-service portal for parents. So they'll be able to go in, update that information, and it kicks off basically an approval workflow into the office to notify them, and we click, yep, that information looks good. So at least that paperwork can certainly be digitized for us. We already do transportation information, that sort of thing through Hack, so that would those same capabilities remain as well for us. So
Great.
That's like, it might seem like a small thing, but, it's amazing how many parents ask when that's coming.
I saw the most recent thread back at the start of the year.
The requests, are directly proportional to how many kids they have in the house.
I can believe that.
So.
Yep. Just having it online as a self-service portal, we've been hoping that email addresses are always a fun thing for us, either to obtain them or to keep them up to date. Now,
Right.
just like any other system, parents can go in and now provide that to us. So as we look at Connect Ed and different things, we're hoping that'll increase those numbers for, my God, did we not move?
No.
We're hoping it'll increase those numbers for us as well.
All right.
That's great.
Where is that? There it is.
You're just a scintillating speaker.
Clearly. Any questions on the SIS front?
No, we're good.
On the middle school 1-to-1, we are continuing to be in progress with the professional development for their staff. So we're delivering that in a variety of capacities. One is during their team meetings during the day. So Mrs. Treehouse is in there going over the core elements of it. So that's Schoology, that's Google Docs, that sort of thing. So everyone's getting the exact same information there to standardize expectations for that front. In September on the in-service day, we were fortunate to have some high school teachers come down and demonstrate tools they were already utilizing in their classroom. That was well received. Just it's one thing for us to speak, it's another to hear this tool is actively being utilized in a classroom. So that gave them some exposure to that. And a lot of those tools they could engage already without the students having the devices as well. We've seen some of that engagement starting in the classroom with those teachers. They're in progress on the Apple Teacher Certifications. That's the certification program that Apple provides, that they get a little badge for it, and they go through a number of modules on the Apple ecosystem. And then similarly, we have the January in-service time coming up as well. We're looking to do sessions again that teachers can migrate around specific to content areas for use in their classroom as well. So we're moving ahead as scheduled really on that front.
How do you feel the percentage participation is?
I've been pleasantly surprised.
I've already approved several, reviewed several purchases already for novels for next year, electronic, at the middle school. So they're already, planning, that instead of using paper copies, and I mean, I know that's a simple thing, but it is something that I actually viewed, And I saw several things for math, like that they're test driving some things that that they just bought, like the one teacher, the one student workbooks, electronic copies, just to see what they're like before they purchase it for the whole classroom and stuff like that. So
On the other side that Scott didn't mention, which I thought they came up with, which was a great point, they had students from the high school come down to the September in-service, and there was a lot of apprehension from the staff. There always is. And as the students spoke, the high school students spoke to the middle school staff, they just, much of it melted away, much of the anxiety, because teachers often are the inhibitors to that stuff, because we as adults aren't as good as the kids. So our
Right.
students, Scott can speak to a little more because he was actually there, but definitely handled the questions from the staff, and from the teachers I spoke to, in 180 degrees, some of those who were adamantly against the concept were like, well, now that I've spoken to the kids, yeah, I see it, I get it. It's just-
Well, that's a really great idea to bring the kids in. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I really, thank you for that.
Yeah,
I can't
that's
give our
great.
students enough credit. In a half hour, they changed minds that it probably would have taken the entire school year if we were able to. And they
That's
knocked it
great.
out of the park. They were awesome. I
Well,
couldn't
it's
believe
coming from you. That could be a plunger. Coming from the kids, it's like it's on a plate,
Yeah.
saying, hey, we love this,
Yep.
I know it's a bad analogy, but it's the best one I had, but
Yep.
it's the truth.
Yep.
That's great. And having them attitude-wise out of the gate better just helps the whole thing go along
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
It's great.
Any questions on that front? Alrighty. On the digital document storage platform, that is in progress as well now. They've been going through the server installs, doing a lot of the back-end configuration, building real riveting things for the databases, the fields, all that sort of thing. So that has been incurring for the last 2 weeks. They've been going on the server, installing all their software, getting that done really for leading up to basically finding for us to be able to start testing, scanning in documents and everything else like that. We anticipate that occurring this month in November. So they're moving along at a great pace. So we're anxious for that front. That'll hopefully start eliminating some file folders and filing cabinets for us, and also get us in line with our retention schedule.
Scanning all this old stuff that we talked about last year. I mean, we talked about it a couple different times. Is there any more movement on thoughts on how to get that over? To try and get
Not yet. I haven't tackled that front, mostly until we can see the volume.
Until you see what's going on. I got you.
Exactly what that workload would look like.
Right.
For the students, we know we can scan that stuff in as the new class comes
I
in
got you.
and
Yep.
grow up
Okay.
accordingly. It'd largely be for inactive employee records or that sort of thing.
Right.
And then really in accordance with our document retention schedule, determining what we still have to scan in, what should just die in paper form, basically,
Right,
rather
I
than
got you.
maintaining it in digital copy.
Right. Okay.
And last but not least, something for you guys. Looking at paperless workflow for the board. So looking at Chromebooks for functionality for the board to access documents. And then a platform, Board Docs, which you're familiar with from the policy side of things, that we currently use that to host our policy documents. They also have a agenda functionality. If you pop on some area school districts, they're already utilizing it. I believe Wilson's on, I think Boyertown is another one. And it largely allows that same digital workflow for the agenda items that it would the policy items. So both public and board level items, so you're no longer getting the large packets. It breaks it down systematically for you. It does have security rights, so those confidential packets that you frequently see can still remain, but the public doesn't know those are there. As we're talking about hosting, it switches over to the board docs platform for hosting, so that's, again, one less thing for us. And it increases functionality for us from searching and indexing. Right now, the Google Docs are not ideal to search across, previous years.
Is that a Google Docs shot that I missed now?
I would never do such a thing. But again, it's all web-based as well. So I would look at Chromebooks, really any device would be able to access that, both public and again as board members as well. Looking at the cost for the two items, it would be about $3,000 for the Chromebooks, and we estimate a longer life than just 4 years like we anticipate for our classroom, since that'll be a little bit lighter duty compared to the trials and tribulations of the existing classroom. And the board docs cost comes in at $2,500 a year, and this is for their light version. They do have a pro version, but substantial price increase that it largely is worth entertaining. It's more than triple the cost with limited benefit to us, as far as we go as workflow goes.
And people with their own a piece of equipment, they could enter into that without having to have the Chromebook.
They could, yeah, they could. Yep, it's fully publicly accessible,
Right.
so any device could. And the nice thing for it, beyond just organization, is the ability for everything to be indexed nicely and accessibility-wise. While majority of devices do display everything hosted in Google nicely, this is a much more standard platform as far as web standards go, so it's responsive. Whereas I do see the periodic comments on Facebook that the document didn't load correctly for me, and it comes down to just the browser. Word docs, as far as the platform goes, is responsive and web compliant on
How many
that level.
Chromebooks were you thinking? How many Chromebooks?
That was for 12. Yep.
And then the 2,500 is an annual,
It's for
An annual
the
fee.
actual platform.
yeah, for the platform.
So that handles all the committees, all the agendas, all of our agendas for our board meetings, but also has a section then for, like, when we have something that's private, we'll
Only the board would have access to.
access to that, right?
Yep, so yeah, you'd
You
have
have lock certain things down.
you'd have an authenticated account, so we would know, Kevin Stroll is signing in here, I can see more than just what the board or the general public would see.
So I won't have to print those 85 pages that Kathleen said. Okay. I got you.
Be all there, and
And they're
it's
searchable?
easier to search, easier to.
They're not PDF then?
It's not as cumbersome.
If you have attachments, you would still have a PDF attachment.
Because we get everything in a PDF today.
Yeah, correct.
So all those things would come in a non-PDF format then?
So the structure, so this agenda right here would not be a single document. On there, it would be web-based text on the screen.
I got you.
Formatted appropriately. If I had an attachment for this, you would see a little icon.
For the
indicating
PDF.
the
I
attachment.
got you.
Speaking as a member of the public, for when I go look at other school districts, it's nice because you have the agenda item and the attachment there. You don't have to scroll down through and try and figure out.
Get everything in, I got you. Okay.
Go back and forth.
Yep, exactly. So just from a service delivery standpoint, a little bit nicer for them to access information as well.
What do you think?
Sounds good to me.
Second. No, I like the idea, just whether or not everybody can use it. Are they going to use it? Training, all the things that go along with it, because you hate to have a device just sit and not do anything, right?
Yeah, we go through, training with the board,
Right.
Scott come in and show us.
And then there's things that maybe I write that maybe I don't want to be on that document that I take for notes. Can I take those notes, keep it private till I decide to share it? And on an agenda, do you know what I'm
So,
saying?
yeah,
Like
you would,
right now, I would not let you see all this chicken scratch. I'm just making some notes for myself.
Yeah.
as
So that
well.
would occur more in a document of your choosing, and then you could upload it.
Okay.
What you're referencing is in their pro platform.
I got
That
you.
comes with an over 10 grand cost.
Oh, okay.
So that's,
Yeah.
that's where,
I didn't know if we're sitting in a meeting, you got a Chromebook in front of you. I'm trying to get down to the user level. I apologize, but I'm sitting here typing instead of writing,
Yeah.
and I'm typing on a document that maybe I just wanted for some of my own notes.
Yeah, so I think
It's
that'd
not
be
the case.
a separate tab for you, basically.
I got you.
You just
Yeah.
open up a Word document and just minimize it.
I got you. So Word would be available in that platform?
Yeah, it would be on, you can get that put on your Chromebook.
Yeah, we
Right.
can use Word or Google Docs,
Okay.
either one.
Docs,
Okay.
either one.
Yep, yep.
Gotcha. No, it makes sense. I mean, less paper.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that way you have your own notes in your own file
Right,
on yours that you can pull up at any time.
right. Not that there's any top secret writing here, trust me.
But you can't forget those notes then. That's your-
That's
your
right.
database.
Wait, how many times did I do that? Yes, that was good for me, wasn't it? He's been sitting in a meeting here where my wife had to send me a picture of my notes.
The ones that are on the kitchen table.
Exactly, on the printer. No, I like the idea. The one thing that I was going to ask you about is what do we do for IEP tracking? Is there anything that we have now currently today that tracks that whole process
Did you say IEPs?
for IEPs? Yep.
Yeah, so that's a facet of eSchool, and that
Okay.
will become a facet of Infinite Campus.
That is something that's in Internet Campus now? Do you know what the name of that?
Yeah, it will be in Infinite
Oh, it's
Campus.
in there already, okay.
Yes,
So
yeah,
that's
they
sort of
have a
just
whole-
segue over to that process?
Yeah, correct, they have a whole special education suite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's all I have.
Awesome.
Great, thank you. Good. And it is now 6:41. Coming to an end.